Should Ryan Day be fired? Ryan Day is now 1 for 4 against Michigan this season, and Ohio State fans are justifiably very upset about it. If you don't understand that even though Ryan Day has one of the highest winning percentages of active coaches in college football, Ohio State fans are still upset with him losing the game, then you just don't understand the game. And that's totally fine. Not everybody understands it if you're not a part of the fan base, but it is something that is held very close to Ohio State fans and Michigan fans alike, and it's something that can make or break your season. Ryan Day, now 1 and 4, coming out of having one of the highest, if not the highest, Zach, point spreads favored ever in the Ohio State Michigan game. Ohio State loses this game, and it wasn't just a loss that was on the backs of maybe a player that wasn't trying hard enough or something like that. It was on the backs of bad play calling, bad coaching. And sure, you can blame the kicker, but some would argue the kicker never should have been in those situations because they should have done a better job calling plays, getting closer to the first down marker, and being able to get the first down. Zach, tell us, what are some of your reasons that you think and then you're hearing from Ohio State fans on why Ryan Day should be fired?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall thought, and I think this is both me and the fan base, is like at some point you are who you are. Ryan Day has not shown an ability to beat the team up north except one time when he was, you know, coming off of a 7-0 streak with Urban Meyer. And so like he coasted into that win, and that was the best Ohio State team of my lifetime, even though they didn't win a national championship. 2019, that accumulation of talent was undeniably one of the best, if not the best, in my lifetime. And then after that, he has lost four straight, and he's done it with equally talented teams. And in this case, this year, a better team, more talented team, I should say. And yet, as Josh Pate would say, the pucker meter was through the roof today. And it's not just Ryan Day. You see it permeate his whole team. And so I think that's one. I think a second thing is for as much as we talked about a $20 million roster, you couldn't spare a couple $100,000 for a kicker, for a punter, or for a couple more good offensive linemen. Like we have been saying for years, you've got to do better with offensive line recruiting. Well, you know what? You lost two, and they were good starters, but you don't have anybody to you don't have guys good enough for this level that Ohio State's supposed to be at. You don't have a kicker who's reliable, even from 35. And Jaden Fielding has had good moments. I'm not trying to say anything, but you don't have a field goal kicker who's consistent. I mean, where's Nugent? Where's Josh Houston? Where are the reliable kickers that we had in the Tressel era? Like they're nowhere to be found. Punter, like we can't get a 40-yard punt. Like what there's like our special teams is abysmal. And so those I think are just a couple. I think I could give 10 more reasons why, but I think those are the tip of the iceberg. And I don't want to say he doesn't take the game seriously. I think he takes the game seriously, but he is not good under pressure, and it permeates the whole team. And he is not invested in the right places, even in this new CEO role.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I think that Ryan Day definitely struggles with big games, specifically against Michigan, and that was kind of this was like kind of the game that broke the straw on the camel's back, right? Like you could blame the last 3 years on cheating and Kyle McCord and all that stuff, right? Like you could kind of have that. This game, you come in, the opening line in this one was 23.5 point favorites. Now it eventually got down to 19.5 because of the way people were betting and stuff like that, but still pretty much around a 20 point favorite in this game. One of the highest, if not the highest favorites ever in Ohio State Michigan game history. And you go down to the wire, and in the fourth quarter, you get 10 total yards. Like, Ryan Day is an offensive guy. This is what Ryan Day's career and everything has been about at Ohio State, is the offense. And the defense has kind of been there and it's helped him, but eventually the defense does let you down and then you just don't have enough offense. Well, now in this game, you didn't have enough defense. The defense held Michigan to 13 points, and I think Michigan's scoring drives before the last field goal of the game was like combined 10 yards between the two scoring drives because Ohio State's offense was giving the ball over and giving good field position to Michigan in this game. So you compile all that together and you say, at what point is this guy going to put it all together? At what point is he going to get it? Because if you can't win this game, which is so important to Ohio State fans, if you can't win this game with this team where everybody was coming back, I mean, as much as Ohio State fans don't like people to say it, it's true. A $20 million roster, like, you have all this stuff going for you, and you can't win this game. When are you ever going to win it? Because I got news. Like, Michigan's not getting worse. Ohio State's not bringing any players back. It's just going to get tougher from here. And for Ryan Day, the future does not look good. I think the other thing with it that I'm hearing and seeing that I don't hear talked about as much is this obsession that Ryan Day has with trying to be tough, not being soft, and how much that influenced the play calling in this game. Like, you can't talk about we don't listen to the outside noise and it's all about us and what we do, and then go into a game and it's very clear that you're trying to get rid of a narrative about your team being soft by trying to run the ball up the middle. Like, I get you want to be a tough football team and run the ball up the middle, but if that's not the strength of your team, you have the best wide receivers, some of the best wide receivers in the country against one of the worst secondaries in the country. And you can't throw the ball up Jeremiah Smith more. You can't target Jeremiah Smith more than 7 times in this game. Like, I know Will Howard was struggling, but at a certain point, you got to air it out. And that's just not what Ryan Day wanted to do in this game. And Sharon Moore said something that was impactful to me at the end of the game in his post-game press conference, where somebody asked him something about being tough. They said, do you talk about being tough a lot with your team? Is that something, you don't talk about it very much with the media? And Sharon Moore said, I mean, when you're a tough team, you just don't have to talk about it very much. It's just who you are.
Yep.
Well, guess who wants to talk about it more than anybody else? It's Ryan Day. He wants to talk about it. He wants to act like they're tough. He wants to, talk about, we're this, that. This is a tough football team. We saw off the Notre Dame game. He said it after the Penn State game as well. I mean, it's the example of, if you are, you don't have to talk about it. People will notice it. But they've not been able to prove it in this game against Michigan. I think they proved it at other points in this season, but this final game against Michigan was the one they needed to prove it in. Zach, it's not all doom and gloom. Ryan Day obviously is a good coach. He has never lost to an unranked team. He has one of the best active or winning percentage among active coaches in all college football. What are some reasons that you see and hear from Ohio State fans why he should not be fired?
Yeah, I mean, an addendum to that, he now has a loss against an unranked team because this was an unranked Michigan team.
Yeah.
I think the reasons, like, we are in a new era, and so in the whole scope of college football, and I'm not saying, as an Ohio State fan, I'm not saying that I adhere to this, but in the whole scope of college football, this game does carry less stakes from a championship perspective. And so even, obviously this year it's not the same, but in future years, you might get to a Big Ten championship even with losing to Michigan. You might lose to Michigan and then play them the next week in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Ohio State's going to get in the playoff. Like, I don't think there's any doubt. They have wins against Penn State, who's going to be a top 3 team now. They have a win against a top 10 Indiana team. They're going to be at least 9th. So, like, they have 2 of the best wins out of anybody, and they only have 2 losses. So they're going to make the playoff. And in this world, that means something. So I think that's one reason. I think another reason is that there is a danger to tearing everything down. And that's what you're doing if you fire Ryan Day, is you run the risk of losing your talent base. You run the risk of, having guys like Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, all these other guys transfer out, which they might do anyway, but you do run that risk. You set recruiting back for a year, and that could be really tough. And also, if you fire him now, whatever hope you have for a playoff run, you might self-sabotage. So, like, I think there are stakes. I'll say one reason I don't think that's there. Like, the buyout's big. It's not as big as others, though.
Yeah.
It's 37 million, which is big. But if Ohio State boosters really want him gone, they can do that.
I mean, if they're not willing to pay to the NIL and they're more willing to
Yeah.
pay to the buyout of the coach.
Yeah. And I think that's probably maybe one of the biggest, actually, now that you say that, that might actually be the biggest reason to keep him.
Yeah.
Is you won't be able to acquire as much talent.
I think one of the biggest reasons to keep him, and football fans will not like this answer, and I'm not saying I agree with this answer. This is just something I hear that I think gets a little underrated nationally, but I think it's important to talk about. Ryan Day runs a clean program. Ryan Day runs a program that boosters and fans can be proud of from the standpoint of players get along, players work together, players are not out, causing a ruckus. I mean, how many times has Georgia been ridiculed for the driving and everything else, and other programs where they have a case against some of their players? I mean, you don't always hear about it with other programs because they're not quite in the spotlight as much, but with ESPN wanting to sabotage the Big Ten as much as they want to, if anything like that happens with Ohio State, you hear about it right away. When Tattoo Gate happened, I don't think people realize how much like ESPN was trying to get that story to blow up as much as it was. Like if you felt like ESPN was trying to get the Michigan sign stealing story out there as much as it was, I mean it was, if not the same, more than that with Ohio State and Tattoo Gate. They literally had people going into like offices and trying to talk to people and trying to figure out information if they were a parent of a player or a booster or something like that, like going undercover and trying to get information so that way they could try to bury the program in some kind of way. And Ryan Day has run a clean program. He's had some players that got in legal trouble and stuff like that, but many of them have been released and not been proven to have the issues that, or the legal issues that they were alleged for. So I do think that plays a factor as well. But at the end of the day, if you're going to ask me, should Ryan Day be fired? I don't think he should be fired, but I think he should be encouraged to go somewhere else. He should be encouraged to find a job in the NFL, to find a job as an offensive analyst or maybe as an offensive coordinator someplace else. We just saw Gus Malzahn leave UCF to go be the offensive coordinator at Florida State. Now, obviously, UCF to Florida State is a much different jump than, say, Ohio State to, name your other school out there. But if you can encourage Ryan Day to resign and go elsewhere, that's kind of like that mutual parting of ways that's good for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And people might say I'm crazy and say, look at the record. Look at how many wins he has. At Ohio State, you have 3 goals every single year.
Yep.
Beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and win the national championship. The last 4 years, I mean, I guess they have one more chance this year, but the last 4 years, Ryan Day has gone 0 for 12 on those.
Yep.
Unless they win the national championship, they're 0 for 12 on those goals for 4 years in a row. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying what your program values, if you're not accomplishing it, they got to go.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to fire Ryan Day. The buyout's too big. But I think an encouragement to resign is probably what you're looking at here. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that I hear fans kind of fight back with is, well, who are you going to get? And the way I would respond
There's a lot
to
of
that,
guys out there that can coach at Ohio State. That's all I'll
Yeah.
say.
Well, and I think people forget that Ryan Day, we took a chance on him. right? Like
No head
we
coaching experience. Yeah.
no head coaching. He was selected because he was Ryan Day's heir apparent. Like that was like, well, he's Urban Meyer's hand-picked
Yeah.
selection, which great. It was a tryout, and the first couple years went really well. And no trips to Indy since 2020, no wins against Michigan against 2019, no national championships. Like it's like we have now 6 full years of the Ryan Day experience. And as a child of the 90s, let's not wait 13. Like John Cooper went 2-10-1. I'd like to not wait another 7 years to see if Ryan Day can figure this out. Like to me, he made all the changes that we wanted him to make. New offensive coordinator, became the CEO, went out and got his hand selected guy at quarterback, got transfers, spent money, and he can't beat the worst Michigan team probably in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like that's, and by the way, didn't have Colston Loveland, didn't have Will Johnson. Donovan Edwards gets hurt in the second quarter. Like you were playing a Michigan team that was already bad without some of their best players, and you still lost. And that's a trend in Ryan Day, by the way. Like if you look at a number of his losses, 2021 Oregon, no Kayvon Thibodeau, didn't matter. 2022 Michigan, no Blake Corum, didn't matter. This year, no Jordan Birch, didn't matter. Now, no Colston Loveland, no Will Johnson, no Donovan Edwards.
Best game of CJ Stroud's career, 2022 Georgia.
Yep. Couldn't get it done.
Couldn't get it done. And I think that's the issue, right? I mean, we're looking at a situation here where Ryan Day could be the first national championship winning coach who could, I mean, they're not going to fire him, like I said, but be encouraged to leave, right? When Pete Carroll won the national championship and he left, it was his own doing. When Jim Harbaugh won the national championship and he left, it was his own doing. If Ryan Day wins the national championship this year, I know people think Ohio State fans are crazy, but if he leaves, I don't think it'll just be his doing. I think somebody will kind of nudge, encourage him to do so. I think you're right, Zach. You have to think about who the next person is, but that is for another video. If Ryan Day is indeed resigns or fired or let go or whatever that looks like, we will definitely do a video on that. A few names to think of off top of my head, if you want those names. You're looking at Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I know not a lot of Ohio State fans would like that idea because he said he made a mistake going to Ohio State instead of Notre Dame. But you're looking at Marcus Freeman. You could take a flyer on Luke Fickell. I don't think you want to do that with the way Wisconsin's going right now, but that's another name that gets floated out there. Matt Campbell, he's having a good year at Iowa State. He is from the state of Ohio. He's somebody you could look at. And then underrated guy, because there was another coach that came from an FCS program and did pretty well at Ohio State. Eddie George. Eddie George could come in, and he could be a head coaching candidate. He is one of the best coaches ever in Tennessee State history and the FCS level, and he could find himself at Ohio State and I think be a real powerhouse. So, Zach, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Man, it's a sad day in Ohio State, and it's sad. I like Ryan Day. Like I like him a lot, and I really wanted to work for him, but it's just clear it's not.
I was getting ready to say that on Twitter earlier today. Was, to me, the toughest thing about this is that I do like Ryan Day, and I am actively rooting for Ryan Day to succeed. I'm not just rooting for Ohio State to beat Michigan. I'm rooting for Ryan Day to succeed because I think, like I said, he runs a clean program. His players do a good job. I think that it's a program that you can respect off the field and what the players do, but if they're not performing on the field, it doesn't really matter what you do off the field. Yeah. So, all right, everybody, thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Check us out on Sunday night for the recap episode and Tuesdays as well. Power Rankings episode on Saturday. We'll see what we're going to do with that. We might do some short episodes on Saturday. We'll see. But that's something that we'll let you know on probably on Tuesday if we get that figured out. So thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. Have a good one.